it's Jim from the mavestar Observatory. Guys, we've got some really cool stuff coming up in this video. There's quite a bit of work going on at the mavestar Observatory at the moment. We've got the SD card out of the TriMag system to process. We've also got the magnetosphere data to process, and Jeff recently sent his data from Perth, Australia. So there's quite a lot of stuff going on with regards to that, but I know at least one of our viewers will know what's coming up in this video right now. So as you can see, we was on about the other day that NOAA on the 10th of December 2019 had released their data for the world updated model of the magnetic intensity. And you guys might recall I said in the title of that NOAA was misleading people because the date on one of their documents out of the 45 maps that they'd released in the data had still got the published date of January 2019. So huge thanks and well done, Harvey, for taking the next step of the initiative. What Harvey done is he notified NOAA of their map with the date 2019 January, and they emailed him back. Not only did they say that they was going to amend the date on the chart, like you can see, from January 2019 to December 2019, as they have done, but they also thanked him for bringing it to their attention. Apparently it was a mistake and something to do with the legend on their maps, so they've put it right. So the map that we was looking at is the actual released map from December 2019, 8 days ago, and it's now been amended by NOAA. And you know, I double checked it and downloaded the file again, and here we can see the date December 2019. So well done, Harvey. Amazing. Sometimes it just takes, you know, a little initiative from one of our viewers and we can sort the problem out. You know, I'm quite pleased for Harvey. You know, he's obviously got a good result there. You know, he's managed to tell NOAA that they've made a mistake in the documents, and that was through just watching one of our videos. So we've got the 2019 January map now to compare with the 2019 December map, so let's get on with that. And once again, well done, Harvey. So let's compare the two maps. On the left we've got the release of January 2019, and on the right we've got December's release 8 days ago, 2019. And to call it either way, whether there's been an increase in one part of the world and a decrease in another, is very difficult to tell because of the resolution of which they've changed now with the new release. As you can see on the new release that they issued 8 days ago, the latitude goes up to 90 degrees north, and if you look on the left hand side, the one that they released in January this year, it only goes up to a latitude of 70 degrees north. And you know, if I squash up one of these maps to try and get it to look the same so we can make comparisons, the lines also change, and it's almost like, you know, it's been done on purpose. You would think that NOAA would have some sort of editor that before they released information that he would, you know, compare, like, because that's the whole point in releasing data, is so that people can research it like ourselves and make noticeable comparisons. But when they do this, it's very difficult. And you know, not only have they included in the new release the position and the dipole of the magnetic north pole, they didn't on the one that released in January. So yes, this system's better, but we're none the wiser as to what really has been going on, apart from a few noticeable things like the dot over Canada measuring some of the intensity, but not all these lines have been allocated, you know, the nanotesla intensity. And you know, for that reason we can't find out really what is going on over Canada. Only when we compare it with the other chart, which I'm about to show you, do we get an impression of what is taking place over Canada with regards to the reduction and time period. You know, so let's go and have a quick look at that, because these maps are not benefiting us in any way at all, because the resolutions are different. So really it's only when we look at models like this that we can see the actual changes taking place. If you look at the intensity over Canada on the left top spherical map, you can see that the red area is actually shrinking, and you can see those intensity lines drawing in closer and closer. You can also see on the bottom disk the expanding South Atlantic anomaly quite clearly, and you can see some progression of the intensity that's leaking off from Canada into Siberia intensity, highest region there. So what I'm saying is, with the maps that they've provided, it doesn't really give us much to look at, because they've now changed the format in the latitude on the maps, and messing about with trying to get them to match up is very difficult, and for that reason it's not a very easy task to see what is changing, and you can almost accuse them for doing this on purpose, because the whole point in releasing this information is so that people that are researching it can spot the noticeable changes within the magnetic intensity of the whole of the Earth, and when they do things like that, it's almost impossible. But at least we've got up until 2016 a rate of how much the magnetic North Pole is migrating on here. You can see it. You can see the intensity dropping off, very rapid, over Canada in that period of time. You can see on the right top screen or disk the magnetic North Pole leaving the Antarctic Peninsula, and you can also see a gradual slow increase of intensity coming up over the south coast of Australia. So as I promised in the other video, we're just having a look at some of the raw data that came in from Perth, Australia. Big thanks to Jeff down there sending it in for us a couple of days ago. I've just got round to putting it in Excel, and soon I'll be processing it, putting it in a chart and sending it up to our website, poleshiftnews.com. if you have a look. Just click on the mavestar global data and select Perth, Australia, and you can see the chart that will be up there a bit later on today. But what I wanted to just bring to your attention, as I mentioned in the video the other day, there's been some little shifts of activity, just creeping up at some points nearly 1 microtesla. As you can see, it goes from 59.99 to 60.4. Again 60.2, but we're looking at a total of 2,689 individual readings of the intensity down there in Perth. So if we just go up the the scale, we'll just pick up on the points where it's changed to 60 microteslas on the readings, and you'll see it is becoming more frequent as the time goes on. We've got a few more here, 63, 60.2, 60.1, so it's gradually and then goes to 59. So there's a little shift in the intensity down there over Perth, but not like what we've seen over, I'm just going to quickly go up there, but not like we've seen over on the Gold Coast, because that has dropped nearly 4 microteslas. But you can see that 60 pops up a lot in the readings, and we're not going to make discoveries every day, that's for sure. Sometimes you have to wait and draw out a trend in the data, but we are starting to see it creep up over 60 microteslas. And that could be telling us that at some point the intensity is slowly moving up over the west coast towards Perth. The intensity is increasing, and as it's increasing and pushing closer towards Perth where our station is, the intensity is slightly going up. We did expect to see that also being the case over on the Gold Coast, on the east coast of Australia, but we're seeing something quite different, and we're also seeing something quite different in Hong Kong. If you have a look at that data, another one that has shown over the last 5 or so months, a decay of about 4 microteslas, which is a big chunk, guys, when you consider the total intensity of the Earth in microteslas is only about 58, so that's quite a chunk. You know, it's about 7% of the magnetic intensity, just to give you an idea. And this is where the data starts to get collected from the 16th of the 11th 2019, and it ends on the 14th of the 12th 2019. So I'm going to process this, get it up on the website for you. If there is time today, I'll also do the trimag and the magnetosphere. Should have been done yesterday, but guys, I'm just flat out at the moment. You know, there's a lot of other things going on other than just collecting data and processing it. You know, we've got the build of the 2 muon detectors to finish. We've got work going on with the cloud generator, sorry, the cloud chamber, and on top of that, we're trying to you know, get these silicon photo multipliers delivered, because at the moment they're on back order, so we're waiting for the company to get their order before we get our order. So there's quite a lot going on. So if I don't put the trimag data in this video, I'll certainly include it in the next one. But the next thing I wanted to show you just briefly is the process data that we're looking at in the chart on the website, and I just want to show you the readings I got off the CO2 monitor and oxygen monitor this morning when I took an atmospheric reading of the CO2 outdoors. So that's interesting, by the way. So yeah, stay with us for a few more minutes and we'll get that sorted. So I'm quite surprised, because I've just put the chart up of the data I just showed you in the raw format up on PoleShift News, and I thought we was getting an increase just looking at this month alone, going back to November the 11th. When I've just compared it with the October's data that was collected from Perth, we'll actually see that there's a bit, we've gone the other way, guys. We've actually had a reduction in the data, and that makes it 3 now out of 3 of our magnetometers showing a 4 microtesla drop. If we can get some data in from California off JD and Brad, and we're seeing the same on their data, then it could be a global event where the magnetosphere has just decided to reduce in intensity. But right now, Hong Kong, Perth and the Gold Coast are all showing around a 4 microtesla depletion. So that was quite unexpected. I thought, because we was just looking at this month, we was just seeing a spike of it go over 60, and I thought, well, you know, I'll mention it. But in fact, what we've actually seen when we've uploaded it to the website is there's been a drop of 4 microteslas. This links up with the other 2 now that we've got showing a drop in microteslas, and this is interesting times, guys, for that reason. It doesn't look like I'm going to have the time to do the trimag data today and the magnetosphere strength data, but I'll definitely put that up tomorrow and should do a video on that. It'll be interesting to see what's happened over the last month with the trimag and the heading of the magnetic north pole, so we'll do a latest update on that, where it is, and we'll do the longitude and latitude for you. So yeah, let's just finish off this video with the data that I collected today with regards to CO2, because that is also interesting as well. It's been a bit of a day all round, hasn't it, guys? So as you can see from the parts per million, it's at 389. I'll just quickly run the video so you can see it. I think I try and get a bit of a clearer shot than that. I do zoom in on the oxygen. Oxygen's still at 21.27, so that's good, we can breathe. To be honest with you guys, you've really got to do something serious to reduce atmospheric oxygen. It does make up 20% of the gas in the atmosphere, whereas CO2, it's a trace gas. But nevertheless, we can see that it has reduced in its entirety. You know, from the other day, I think the other day we measured it at 405 parts per million, so it's gone down a little bit. And you know, this is you know, they panic people about it being over 400 parts per million now, but they never say, oh look, it's gone down a bit. So I'm just wondering if it varies on a daily basis. One of the reasons I could think that there was probably less today could be down to the temperature. I don't know. We're just going to have to find out the more of the data we collect with regards to CO2 and the parts per million over the next coming months. This was the data. Obviously I've brought the machine in now, so we're taking a reading in my living room. You can see it's at 1177 parts per million, a lot more than what's out in the atmosphere. These alarmists that talk about CO2 never mention things like this, do they? That, you know, probably in your home, in your car, on your commute to work on the train, that these levels are going to go up considerably. And the other thing I did, and I'll do in a video as well just to show you, is what happens when you breathe directly into the vent on this CO2 machine. The alarm goes off as it hits over 2,000 parts per million and continues up to 6,000 parts per million. Now, just to put that into perspective, our atmosphere on this earth many millions of years ago had around about 6,000, 7,000 parts per million. And you know, this was at the same point in time where there was an explosion of life on our earth. So, you know, CO2 benefits up to a certain level. You know, the foliage outside, one thing that these alarmists won't talk about is, you know, we're only 382 parts per million on this trace particle that we're looking at CO2 in our atmosphere. But if it went below 150, it would totally shut down you know, the mechanisms in trees and everything else, because there wouldn't be enough CO2 simply for that. So where is the emergency with regards to CO2 right now? Should we put more in there? Should we take less out? If we take less out, there's a lot less to go back to, you know, 150 parts per million than there is. We can tolerate obviously up to 2,000 parts per million adequately, and if we put it up at 2,000 parts per million, you know, all the biodiversity that relies on CO2 for its growth, like trees and things like that, would benefit even more. But what I'm saying to you guys is we're a lot closer to shutting it all down if we're obviously talking about reducing CO2 in our atmosphere. The other thing is, I've mentioned this a few times now, there are recent satellite photos that have showed the Earth has got greener over the last few years as a result of the slightly higher CO2 levels. So, are they insane? Are they absolutely insane by wanting to reduce CO2? We can tolerate a lot more CO2. Just because there's more CO2 in the atmosphere, obviously, as I've shown, doesn't mean there's less oxygen, because there is plenty of oxygen. It's a massive reservoir. You know, 1/5 of our atmosphere is oxygen, but this only makes up a trace amount, and everything really does depend on good quality CO2 levels. And at the moment, we're at, even if we was only at 400 parts per million, we'd be a lot closer to that shut-off point of only of 150 parts per million. So this is absolutely how absurd these climate alarmists are. And you know what? The guy who runs Extinction Rebellion needs to buy himself one of these detectors so he can see for himself how much CO2 is in his living room. He'll probably find it very uncomfortable at 1100 parts per million, and he'll want to go outside into an atmosphere excuse me, where there's 400 parts per million. You know, again, Greta, buy yourself a CO2 monitor and take it around with you on the boats that you travel on the planes that you travel on, when you're in the shops, when you're not at school, should I say. Yeah, but just take a CO2 monitor and do a little bit of groundwork so that you can understand what it is you're actually protesting about, and know that you are protesting in the reduction of CO2 and shutting down the species, the diverse species of life on this planet that thrives on CO2. And if you ask me what's worse, it's reducing CO2 at this point in time, because we can easily cope with double the amount that's in the atmosphere right now, triple the amount that's in the atmosphere right now, and we won't even notice it. So we're looking back at temperature and CO2 over the last 400,000 years. why we brought this map back up, because it's very interesting, guys. You've got to pay attention to this little region here, and that's the region that we're in. And you can see that the red hockey stick of CO2 goes straight up from that point. Well, isn't that expected anyhow, when global temperatures remain for as long as they have, nearly 10,000 years warmer than what they usually do? Just look back at the chart. They don't usually hang around for that long. So we've enjoyed an unusual period of time, and it's for that reason that we've enjoyed it for as long as we have, because usually it just peaks and then drops back off. But this period of time here we've enjoyed for another, at least 10,000 years, and as a result of that, more CO2's just come out of the ocean. It's as simple as that, and it's not doing any harm to anyone. In fact, if we reduce it back to glacial period times, you can see we almost shut down the diversity of species on the planet. Another interesting thing, I'm not going to pay too much attention to the slight reduction from 408 parts per million to what we saw today. There is a slight reduction, nearly around about 10 parts per million, and I wouldn't pay too much attention to that at this point in time, unless whenever I switch on that machine outside and take an atmospheric reading, it is always at that low level and continuing to decrease, because you know what that will be a sign of, guys? If we see a decrease in CO2 in our atmosphere, well, it tells us something, doesn't it? Something's about to happen, and that is quite simply another glacial period. And we are not prepared for this next glacial period that we are at the door of going into, and it can happen. It could happen this year, it could happen in the next 10 years, it could happen in the next 100 years, but for sure, and you can bet money on it, you can take this to the bank, it's going to happen, because of where we are on this chart right now at 0. It has got to drop off at some point, and when we see it drop off, the CO2, we know that temperature is already declining as a result, because if you look at this, when temperature goes up, CO2 peaks a lot more, and when temperature goes down, it follows it. It's not the other way around for the likes of Al Gore and Greta. By the way, you seem to have, for your argument, spun this around, because like Tony Heller has said many times, the cart doesn't lead the horse leads the cart. So temperature, as you can see, has always gone up before CO2 has on this chart, and when temperature's gone down, CO2 has followed it. So the driving component of climate is not CO2. CO2 does not create a warmer atmosphere on our planet, and this is proof of that. We've got 400,000 years and 5 interglacial periods that prove that very fact. Where are they getting these people from? Are they so insane? Don't they realise that what will happen as a result of reducing CO2 will shut down or slow down the production of all the biodiversities that rely on CO2? And that includes, guys, our crops. Let me tell you something. They're not ready for this next glacial period. They couldn't give a damn about it. But that will result in billions of people losing their lives, because as you can see, when CO2 levels drop, crop production drops. We've got more people on this planet right now than we ever had in our entire history. 7 billion people that depend on crops, and when the CO2 levels drop, crop production goes offline. When temperatures drop, crop production goes offline. And these psychopaths want this to happen. And it'll be a natural event they'll put it down to. And like I said in the video the other day, they are telling us to run towards the danger. It's global warming, the melting ice caps and this, that and the other. That's not happened. We were supposed to have seen the ice caps over the Arctic disappear already, and they're not, they're still there. In fact, I think it's Puffin Island in Canada actually increasing its glaciers. And that is one of the regions that we should focus on, what's going on those islands. Because if the glaciers are increasing, it's another sign that we're getting close to this emerging glacial period. Honestly, guys, we need more tracked emergency vehicles to be built in preparation for this, because after snow's been on the roads for a certain amount of time, the road is unusable. So it's only vehicles that can drive on the snow that can, keep emergency services travelling. We need food storages ready for the whole of the northern hemisphere, so that when the glacial period does start. And you know what, it's not a case of whether it's going to, it's a case that it is going to happen. This is going to take place, guys. I can't emphasize that anymore. We live in a world with maniacs that are running TV production companies telling the world that, you know, we are heading into global warming, when they are, you know, the truth is obviously the opposite, 180 degrees opposite of what they're telling people. We need fuel storages, we need to prepare the electrical grids, the gas grids, the water pipes for what is about to emerge. We've done nothing. We need to secure crops from other parts of the world that can feed the northern hemisphere, and we can slowly adapt, because what can happen here, guys, in this grand solar minimum, the low solar output shrinking the heliosphere, the magnetic reversal of the planet, the weakening magnetosphere, all this can lead to one thing: more cosmic radiation, meaning more cloud vapor, meaning blocking out solar radiation. And when that happens, temperature drops on the Earth, the CO2 follows it, crop production goes offline, and we're in a lot of trouble. And we haven't done what? What have we done? As a over the northern hemisphere, Europe, England, you know, Canada, America, what have we done to prepare for this? What have we done? Absolutely zero. They've raised carbon taxes and not spent it on the right thing. What about putting that money that they've raised, them trillions of pounds, into tracked vehicles, food storages for the population, you know, fuel storages, repairing the grids, getting the grids ready to, you know, withstand the severe temperatures that is going to come on this planet? I'm sorry, guys, I've got on a little bit of a pedestal here, but I just can't believe it. I really just can't believe it. The world in which we live. And how easily people would believe a lie than the truth. It's because people just don't investigate for themselves. They would know the truth if they did. You know, when you see core data samples like the Vostok course, you know, and it shows you the CO2 at the time, 400,000 years ago, and you can see that there's a pattern quite regularly happening over that 400,000 years, and you see exactly where we are right now today, and we know what happens when that changes, when the temperature drops, when the CO2 drops. We know what happens. Food production goes straight off the line. At the same time, 7 billion people. We've never had such a big population on the planet. What are we going to do? Are we all going to resort simply down to, you know, eating each other until we've ate as many as we can and there's none left? Well, history incidentally shows us that that's what we do when we're starving. We resort to eating each other. And not too far back in our history either. You look at Stalingrad, when the blockade happened. Over 3,000 people in 1 year arrested for cannibalism. How many didn't they catch? You know, we're capable of things that are unimaginable, guys. And we are rapidly approaching a time where we're going to be put back in some very awkward situations. And it seems to me that the world's governments are purposely, they must be purposely denying what is about to come. Guys, I'm going to have to put the TriMag data in the tomorrow's edition. And, you know, can I just mention, just briefly, guys, we got a link down there. And our observatory has suffered, again, another month of low funding. You know, we do a lot more than what we used to do this year. We've put on a lot more, you know, data collection from various things. You know, hopefully we've helped open people's eyes with the CO2 recently and oxygen in the atmosphere, and you know, we're still striving to get that package out in January to Brazil and South Australia. So you know, we really could do with some support from you guys, and we really need a few more people to step up to the mark and support what we do. Look what we've done over the last week. We forced NOAA to change the data and correct their mistakes. That's, you know, an achievement, guys. That's a milestone in my opinion. And Harvey, well done for that. And you know, just a big thanks to those people that have supported us recently. you know, but still we need to do better, guys. Come on, get behind your little observatory over here in the UK. We're doing our best and we're working hard, and we do deserve, if anything, a little bit of support. So links are down there. I'll say what I usually do. I'll catch up with you tomorrow, and as always, guys, try and have a good day, and as always, bye for now.